Okay, and welcome to another installment of Mr. Fisher Does My Homework For Me. I'm just joking. Okay, so a couple of things you need to know before we start this one. First off is that you need to know all, and I mean all, your parallelogram theorems. All of them. You need to know all of them. If you don't know all of them, then you need a reference. Okay, or something that sits next to you so you could tell, is it a parallelogram, yes or no, check mark, yes or no. Okay, you also need to know about rectangles. The only thing different from a parallelogram to a rectangle is that a rectangle has 4 right angles, or it has the diagonals are all congruent. Okay, one of these makes it a rectangle. Okay, here's the flow chart. Now, in this flow chart, you'll see that if it's a parallelogram and it wants to be a rectangle, then it has to have one of these two things. So it either has to have 4 right angles or it has to have the diagonals equal. Okay? If it is going to be a rhombus, it's going to have these special properties. And then if it's a square, it's going to have all of them. Okay? Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is that a rectangle, in order for a parallelogram to be a rectangle, it has to have all of parallelogram theorems. It has to be a parallelogram. Then it either has to have 4 right angles or the diagonals be equal. Okay? In order for something to be a rhombus, which is what we're learning today, it again has to have all of the parallelograms. All the parallelogram theorems have to be true. Okay? But what sets a rhombus apart is that all the sides are equal. So if all the sides are equal, then it's a rhombus. And a parallelogram, if it's a parallelogram whose all sides are equal, it's a rhombus. The diagonals are perpendicular to each other, so if it's a parallelogram and the diagonals are equal to each other, then it's a rhombus. And then if it's a parallelogram and the angles are bisected, then it's a rhombus. Okay? If it is a rhombus and a rectangle, then it's a square. So you have to prove, is it a quadrilateral? Yes. Is it a parallelogram? Yes. Is that parallelogram going to be, is it a rhombus, or is it a rectangle, or is it both of these? Okay? So let's take a look at our first top part. Okay? Now the top part says, give all names possible and circle the one that is the most specific. Okay? So all the names possible. So here are the names that are possible. It's either a quadrilateral, it's either a parallelogram. It also could be a rectangle. It could be a rhombus. Or it's a square. Okay? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options. Okay? Now it wants all the names possible, and then it wants the most specific. Okay? So all the names possible. So this first one, okay? Is it 4-sided? Yes. So it's a quadrilateral. Okay? Is it a parallelogram? Well, I look at my theorems. Yes, it is a parallelogram. Is it a rectangle? No. A rectangle needs 4 right angles or diagonals to be equal to each other. Okay? Is it a rhombus? Well, a rhombus needs all the sides equal. So are all the sides equal here? No, they're not. It needs the diagonals to be perpendicular to each other. Nothing shown there about the diagonals. And the angles bisected. Nothing shown about the angles. Okay? So that's the farthest we go, and the answer is parallelogram. So let's look at the second one. It is a quadrilateral. It's got 4 sides. Okay? Is it a parallelogram? Yes, because a parallelogram has opposite sides be equal, so it is a parallelogram. Is it a rhombus? A rhombus has all sides equal. Is this a rhombus? Yes, it is. So it's a rhombus. Now, is it a rectangle? Does it have four right angles or diagonals equal to each other? Yes, it's got four right angles, so it's also a rectangle. If it's both a rhombus and a rectangle, then it has to be a square. So it has to be a square. So this whole thing here is the answer. These are all the things that it is, but this is the most specific. Okay? Now, let's take a look at this one. I'm skipping this one because it's a rhombus. So let's take a look at this one. Okay? Is it a quadrilateral? Okay? Yes, it is. It's four-sided. Okay? Is it a parallelogram? Parallelogram says that opposite angles are equal. Are opposite angles here equal? Yes, they are. So it's a parallelogram. Now, is it a rhombus? No, not a rhombus because it doesn't really talk about the diagonals. It doesn't talk about the side lengths. It doesn't talk about the angles being bisected or anything like that. Okay? So it's not going to be a rhombus. But now, is it a rectangle? A rectangle says it has to have four right angles or the diagonals are equal. So is it a rectangle? Yes, it is. It's a rectangle. Now, it's not a rhombus, so it can't be a square, so it has to be a rectangle. That's it. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip that one because it's quadrilateral, nothing else special. So let's take a look at this one. On this one, if you look really closely, there's two lines, one line, and then these are equal as well. Okay? Now, is it a quadrilateral? Yes, it is. It's four sides, so it's for sure. Okay? Is it a parallelogram? Yes, opposite angles here are equal, so it's a parallelogram. Is it a rhombus or a rectangle? Well, a rhombus would mean that the angles are bisected. It would mean that all the sides are equal, and it would also mean that the diagonals are perpendicular. Not given anything about the diagonals. But I do know that both of these sides here are equal. Since I now proved that this is a parallelogram, in a parallelogram, opposite sides have to be equal. Oh no, if opposite sides have to be equal, that means that these two things here have to be equal, which makes this a rhombus as well. Okay? Now I don't know if it's a rectangle because I don't know that they're 90, and since it can't be a rectangle, it can't be a square. Okay, I'm going to erase all my work real fast here so I can get to the last one. Okay, this last one, it's four-sided, so it's quadrilateral. Okay, the next thing is it a parallelogram? Opposite sides are equal, so it's a parallelogram. Okay, is it a rhombus? Well, are all sides equal? Are the diagonals perpendicular? Nope, nope, nope. So, is it a rectangle? Yes, it is. All four angles are 90, so it's a rectangle, and that is my most specific one. Okay, now let's look at these ones here at the bottom. I'll take this one, I'll put it there. So I'm just going to graph my little points. Okay, now my dots are a little hard to see. You might need to zoom in, but 0, 3, I might make several of them so you can see it. 2, 4, 4, 3, and 6, 4. That is going to be a parallelogram. Okay, so the next one, let's do that one here. Negative 2, 1. Negative 1, 3. 0, 1. And 1, 3. Now that looks about even on each side. It looks about 2, 2, 2, and 2. So I'm going to say that that's a rhombus. And this last one, -3, 0, -3, 3, 0, 0, 0, 3. Now that looks exactly like a square, and that's going to be a square. Okay, that's all we got time for today. I will see you guys back in class.